right, need of the hour kind of a topic we'll be dwelling into this today, the rise of conscious consumerism, right? So the newest consumer is basically evolving. They want more transparency, I believe, sustainability, and ethics. Like they're going beyond just purchasing a product. They're looking for the impact actually. Like they're reading the labels current now these days, right? So eco-aware is not just a label, I believe. It's a mindset, and that's driving the purchasing decisions for the consumers. And so, as D2C brands, I believe it's very critical to meet these demands while being sustainable as well today, like to running the business as well. So, on the one hand, aligning sustainability with the business can actually attract consumers being sustainable, right? But it's very difficult to manage and actually figure out a supply chain to be cost efficient and to be profitable at the same time, right? So I guess, welcome Simran. We are excited to dwell this into this today with you because Coparo is a brand. It doesn't need an introduction when it comes to clean and home care products and natural clean home care products. And it's Coparo is a example that how business can actually align sustainability with functionality, meeting the rising demand of weak consumers. So over to you, Simran. Would love to hear about your journey, about Coparo, and a bit about topic.
Thank you so much, Muskan, for having me. I'm very excited to be speaking here, to the D2C Insider cohort. This is one, set of groups that I'm a part of, which, no matter where you are in the world and you could be taking a vacation, but these groups will just keep pinging and pinging and pinging. But it's great because it's actually been able to build a fantastic sense of sort of camaraderie between founders. जयपुर में बैठा है कोई दिल्ली में बैठा है कोई मुंबई में बैठा है and this you I mean thanks to the efforts that you guys put in, there is platform, there is actually a real platform for D2C founders to come in and connect. So and the effort I know that goes into maintaining these threads and communities for different cities, for women different from, it's amazing. So awesome, and very happy to be speaking here, and hopefully, what we'll discuss over the next few minutes will be useful to people who are either building their own D2C, or they are just trying to incorporate some of our learnings, into their plans. And I'll kind of start there. I know many of you will know about Coparo, but yet a founder can never stop selling. So Coparo is a D2C brand in the space of home cleaning. So we make things like dishwash liquids, detergents, floor cleaners, hand washes, and our products are plant powered, and they are better for you and they're better for the planet. And I think that is why Muskan has invited me here for this session. I had started building Coparo over 3 years ago, and we had a very amazing moment when we came last year, on Shark Tank, where we were able to bring our message out to a much larger set of people. And because I am making a product which is so ubiquitous, how everybody has to wash their dishes thrice a day, everybody has to mop their floors once a day, everybody has to wash their clothes, once a day. So given the fact that it's a product which everyone needs, the fact that we were able to put our message out, we've really seen an amazing last year. At our cornerstones is definitely, coconut based ingredients. So that is what our name means, Coparo. So it's from copra. Copra in South India, West India typically means coconut. So it is a play on the word copra. It's Coparo, copra se Coparo. And the idea is that we are using so many clean labels. Some people are choosing better for you footwear because it's made of, let's say, recycled materials, right? Neiman is a fantastic example of that. We are choosing consciously when it comes to what we put in our bodies. So some people are going for, let's say, organic attas or dals. We're trying to choose the better cooking oil. We are also trying to choose the correct personal care products, which also are better for us and therefore also for the environment. And why not home care? So Coparo was born out of just this need, and that's the journey we've been traversing. I think initially, अपने मन में भी बहुत doubts होते हैं, पर दूसरों के तो होते ही हैं, right? Where they're like, अरे, India, no one really does the cleaning in their house themselves. This is something that, let's say your help is doing, or, first I will try and, eat better, then I'll join a gym. Last mein aake hum cleaning pe aayenge. We have been very, very positively surprised with the love that we've got in terms of just the orders. And we're very proud that today there's probably 7.5, 8 lakh Kuparo, customers who've touched our product, felt our product in some shape or form, whether they've bought it from our website or Amazon or bought it from the offline stores. So I'll pause there. So we, again, just to summarize, we are building a sustainable home care brand. I never said that I want to build a sustainable brand. I said I want to build a home care brand and a very loved home care brand. And then the rest followed, right? Because how will you build in 2025? It's different from how you would build if you were starting your company in 1975. And hence, building with the knowledge of what is it that consumers care about and what is it that business owners should be responsible for, has given birth to Coparo in the shape and form that it is today. This was not a conscious credo or a motto or whatever. But it made sense to make products which were safer for the environment. It made sense to make products which were baby safe and pet safe. It made sense to make cleaning sprays without ammonia. It just made such good business sense to do it. And I think that's fundamentally why, brands are born. They are born out of a business sense, but they're also born out of a vision of today and today's context.
True that. So I guess, yeah, sustainability would not be a choice. It will just be a default in the upcoming D2C brands, I guess, in the coming years. So that is the way to go ahead. I'll just shoot out a few questions because, like, there are many like it's in parts of building a sustainable brand, right? And you have built one, so there are common nuances questions that comes toward any D2C founder when they are building it. uh, but yeah, before that, the one thing is that is the consumer is actually conscious these days, or is everybody riding on the me too kind of a behavior, from your perspective, from your experience, basically?
I think, I can speak from third party data and our first party data, right? So, firstly, the third party data, right? There's enough research. Recently I was reading a Deloitte survey on how do Gen Zs and how do millennials actually choose products. And if when you're looking at a newer purchase in a category or you're looking to change up your brand, how do you actually make that choice, right? And what a brand stands for beyond its functionality is an important consideration. Maybe it is about better for you, maybe it is better for the planet. For me, they are basically both just the same coin. They're just two sides of the same coin. Because typically, if you will see, if something is better for you, it will also be thoughtfully sourced, it will be thoughtfully packaged, and hence it's better for the planet. So I feel definitely we have a big rise in consumer preferences towards better for you and better for the planet. I think in India we are still solving for better for you more directly, and people want to know why your floor cleaner, is a safer choice for pets. Once they are convinced it's a safer choice for pets and they are pet owners, then the fact that it is also a biodegradable formulation is just icing on the cake. So I think, it's about framing it, and it's different for different categories. If you're selling apparel or shoes, the better for you will translate differently. If you're selling pulses or oils, it will again translate differently. But the consumer certainly cares for better for themselves, and I think that is here to stay. I think also one thing I'd add over here is that, initially we were told this, right? And there's always these sort of truths which are told to you before you start, right? To dissuade you कि तुम पागल तो हो गए हो, launch तो करोगे, but मेरा सच सुन लो, right? So we were told also that, it's very difficult to get people to switch. And
Yeah.
switching costs, you have to think about switching costs. Consumers will not switch if they've washed dishes with a certain toxic yellow liquid for 40 years. Then why will they choose your brand, right? Actually, I'm telling you that consumers will switch. If you have to give them a reason to switch. You have to reduce the friction. Maybe that's pricing, maybe that's distribution, whatever that answer is. And of course, you have to communicate your value proposition. So, why should they switch? You must answer, and you must answer it truthfully as a brand owner, not just a line that you've written on your ad. But if you have got a compelling reason to switch, and you've genuinely built your brand on the basis of a consumer need, right, and a gap, then I think people are willing to try new brands. We see this. Uh, People don't want to use their parents' brands. They actually want to make their own choices.
Yeah, the rebel category, I guess. So actually, one of the apart in being in a sustainable space, whether for you, for the planet, one of the major fact like challenges or hindrances people face is the supply chain, right?
Right.
So, what are the biggest bottlenecks in the building a truly sustainable supply chain, and how have you tackled them? And if you can give someone insights on that.
Yeah, I mean, this is the hardest part. This is also very core to your brand, right? So, at the core of it, first you have to think about your product. Let's say you're selling a product or a service, and so in your product, like, are there choices that you can make for your ingredients, for your formulations, which are actually sustainable? So, for in our case, we thought about the fact that we would certainly like to use, let's say, a coconut based surfactant as opposed to a petroleum based surfactant. I don't need to tell you why a petroleum based surfactant would be a worse choice, right? So surfactant is the stuff that gets the agitation, it gets the foam, and usse grease and germs and grime hatta hai. So humne, at the very core of our product, we made the choice to say we want to be plant powered, and we want to be, and then therefore as a byproduct, our products are 95% biodegradable, right? So one is you start thinking about your product or service and say at the very core of it, can you adopt a better, a more sustainable, a better for you, stroke better for the planet, paradigm. Then you can move on to your packaging, right? Where for us, at least, it was a consideration that we are shipping liquids. And in our country, to ship liquids, and given the supply chain, and in any country, to be very honest, to ship liquids, you need to ship it in plastic. It is extremely hard to ship it in glass, or because the costs go up, the damages go up. People don't want to use glass cleaning bottles in their houses because they're worried it'll slip, it can hurt a child. So these are very legitimate reasons. So we had to opt for plastic. So at least what we did want to do was we wanted to work with people who are able to give us what is called PCR, right? Consumer recycle, post consumer, once the consumer's already used it, and then it's recycled, right? And also, we're very conscious that whether it's the choice of the cap or the wad or the bottle, we make sure that it is 100% recyclable as well. So that is important to us. And the other metric that we do look at is that how much refill are we able to sell. So for example, if I'm able to sell, let's say, 2.5 lakhs of refill bottles, then I save roughly 10,000 kgs of plastic, because when you ship refills, the plastic consumption per ml is lower, because the refill is fundamentally lower grammage of plastic which is going into someone's home. So those are some of the choices that we have made. Then of course the last part of the supply chain is actually your logistics and your deliveries. And there, it is, today of course we use surface transport, and we will continue to use surface transport. We only can encourage people to buy in bulk, and we try and use people who, partners who are themselves adopting certain ESG criteria, and hence you try and make the better choice. Like, even when you are looking at a vendor partner, the vendor partners we went with to create our manufacturing, and to create our supply chain, we basically ensured that these people have, ZDHC, which is a zero discharge of hazardous chemicals certifications, which means that they have certain processes in place where they are managing the sludge or the that comes out, because there's always a waste product which comes out of any manufacturing process. So you make some of these choices. Some are very core to you because those are your design choices. Like, कि आप किस तरह की बॉटल में भेजोगे, आप बॉटल प्लास्टिक की होगी, ग्लास की होगी, आप बॉटल को वापस लोगे नहीं लोगे, आप refill strategies कैसे अडॉप्ट करोगे कंज्यूमर्स के साथ, प्रोडक्ट में आप डालोगे क्या, बनाता कौन है ये, and then some are choices about who you choose to work with. And this is what we have done. I think we are still WIP. We are nowhere where we want to be in terms of having a truly sustainable supply chain, but we work towards it every year.
Yeah, I guess that was a very deeper, elaborative answer for this, because it you actually involved, like, we can actually a few key metrics also you told me, how can we actually measure the impact as well. So yeah, thank you. Moving on to what two myths basically that's revolved around sustainability. One is that it targets tier one luxury market, and the second is it's not profitable, right? So how so first question would be like, how can you make a sustainable product accessible to the wider audience, like tapping into tier two and tier three cities as well? And the if you can just burst the myth around that whether sustainability can be profitable or not.
Right. So I think the first thing is that, uh, when we say sustainability, you get an image of a very Western view of, what the packaging will look like. It'll be very minimal, and it'll be very expensive. The reality is that I can tell you my story and my journey, and I can see this play out in other supply chains and other categories as well. I think if you are able to offer something which is better for you, um, you will buy it. Uh, what will you pay for it? Depending on the involvement of the category. So my category tends to be a little lower involvement than, let's say, food, which is what you're putting into your body, right? So maybe you will pay 25% premium to buy organic dal, let's say, right? But maybe for cleaning, you're only willing to pay 10% premium. So you need to test your price points as to what are consumers willing to pay for for your product, right? And of course, you have to do all of this in a way that your unit economics makes sense. Because you should have enough gross margin. You're doing an online business, let's say, because you need to keep money aside for marketing, logistics, as well as what you're paying the platforms. So I think it is not a luxury. It is what is a luxury is basically clean air, clean water. Unfortunately, that's become a luxury today. But people are willing to pay for it, and it's about 10%, 12%, 15% in my category. In apparel, what's better for you? You may be wanting to pay 30% more, 40% more. So it will depend on what category you're playing in. And I don't think this is a metro city phenomena. Like I can say, even from Coparo's data, we get um, enough orders from tier two cities, from tier three cities. In fact, when you say you're a digital first brand, the reality is that all of India is tapping into you because you are not saying, I will not supply this pin code and that pin code. So I don't think that sustainability is a luxury. I think if you're formulating today, you're thinking about a business today, whether it's a product, whether it's a service, it's a moral responsibility to think about the environment and make a brighter choice. It comes very intuitively to women, and yeah.
Yeah. I'll ask one last question, and then we'll break into the audience as well. Uh, There is one more obstacle that D2C founder faces when it comes to raising money for the sustainability. Like, they want to make some eco-aware products, but is there money in the market for sustainable brands? Are there VCs or investors putting to bet on it on the early stage specifically? And did you face any challenges in that area?
No, I think there's a lot of interest in climate tech. There's a lot of interest in, even things like EV. There is certainly a lot of interest in socially conscious angles as well. If you're setting up a factory which is employing, let's say people from marginalized communities, and you're able to generate certain amounts of employment for women, all of these are seen very positively. I think you need to do your homework about two things: your consumer and the whole use case and the problem. And second is the VCs, and they are two separate things. You should not confuse the two. I think you need both. Just because there is money in climate tech, you should not do a climate tech startup, because you should obviously have your own idea and your own sort of need gap. The need gap should be real. It should be validated by talking to, let's say, 100 consumers, potentially even doing a prototype, you know. So I feel like, you've asked me two questions. So I think the first is, what business should you do? You should do a business which makes money. Now, whether or not you raise capital for it or you don't raise capital for it is immaterial. So you should do a business which makes money, and therefore you should look at the opportunity from the lens of saying that is there real demand here? Will I get, can I, do I know my first 500 paying customers? Do I know my 1,000 paying customers? If you're a B2B client, then it's different numbers. But do you know those people, right? And is it just your intuition or your gut, or is it a little bit more than that, where you've actually spoken to consumers or you've tested out something? And I think there's no substitute for doing that. Once you do that and you have a business which is making money, then of course the funding will follow, you know. You may not need it, and God bless you if you don't need it, because that's the best kind of business to build. But if you do need it, and it's a good business, it's a genuine need gap, you will get the money. So I don't think there is any sort of percentage target. You know, there's no, let's say, target to say कि हमको sustainability में इतना डालना है उतना डालना है. But yes, there are. You should do your research. There are enough funds which do like the thesis of a better for you, better for the planet, and then hence you should research those, and those should be your first port of calls if you are indeed building in that space.
Yeah, lovely to hear. And but yes, let's break into the questions that we have received while filling the form first. Few questions we'll take from there because we have received tons of questions though, but we'll not be able to answer all the questions today because of time constraints, right? So right? And please, everybody, drop your questions in the chat box, right? So we'll be taking you one by one. And I guess you are definitely reachable on LinkedIn. So when whose questions doesn't get answered, please do reach out to us. Please do reach out to her. Right. So yes, the first question is: Kupara has established itself as a clean and sustainable home care brand. What were some of the biggest challenges you faced during the early growth phase, and how did you overcome that? Then it's a like basic question.
Yeah. So I think the first set of challenges is really about, you know, your MOQs and things like that, right? So, you know, initially, I think all brands, we have to sometimes end up making a year's supply at one shot because you're not able to meet the MOQs of manufacturers. So I think in the early days, your capital gets blocked. Marketing is also harder in the earlier days because your over time your CACs come down. Over time, you get better repeats. And when you are building in a category like mine, where the budget spends of some of the larger players are very, very high, you know, and it's just harder to go up against them, and hence uh, your CACs were high, and so were mine, right? So that's the second challenge. And the third, for me, very specifically, was that I had to start out in a time where there was still a lot of shutdowns happening because of COVID, and hence one had to build a team remotely, and to build an early stage team remotely and to get that rhythm going and get that cadence of operations is harder. So those were my challenges in the early phases. You know, I have bittersweet memories of all of this stuff, you know, including packing orders, and you know, I remember we were so excited. We started off our office finally, and then the Delta wave happened. Then we were again off for a while, and then we came back in, and then there was Omicron, and then we didn't know how serious it is. So then again, and people are not always local, right? People come from hometowns, so then everybody goes, then everybody comes back. So I think, yeah, the first time we were able to spend a full month in the office felt very, very special. Uh, so yeah.
Yeah, that was good. That was a very weird time, the COVID time, the last 2, 3 years. So the next question is like how to validate your PMF for your eco-friendly products. Are there any specific strategies or metrics?
So I think, you know, yeah, this is a term which gets thrown around a lot, right? I can just tell you that your idea of PMF will also shift, because on day one, how do you know if you have PMF? You don't know. The At the 6 month mark, you look at it differently. At the 12 month mark, you look at it differently. Initially, you should think about a product where your price comparative index is decent. You know, when I say decent, like I said, it could be 10%, it could be 20%, it could be 40%, but what works in your category? uh, at that price competitiveness index, are you making gross margins which are north of 65%? Um, and that's very important, because less than that, you will not be able to make money online at all. It's very, very difficult. Let me just put it like that, right? Then you start looking at the other metrics, saying that, you know, how's my CM2? You know, is my CM2 negative still after 1 year? then maybe you need to rework something in your formulations, your gross margins, your communication, or maybe the consumer need is just not there, right? You need to ask yourself some of those tough questions. And then other metrics you can look at is things like, are your repeats holding at scale, you know, and are your tax coming down with time? Uh, so every business will have its different nuances, but initially I think you'd start with the fact that, do you, given your price competitive, what's your GM? Then you will move on to, is your CM to now positive? And is it improving? Even if it's negative, was it -9? Now is it -7? Now is it -5? And I think that's very important. And then you think about marketing efficiencies and some repeat cohorts and those kinds of things. It's a moving target. Like, I think you don't really know if you have PMF for 2 years, 3 years. It's tough.
I believe it's not about just eco-friendly products. It's about for any product. That's how your journey will go, right? So we don't have to label it like an eco-friendly product, right? So it's like a just normal building a D2C brand, right?
Yes, yes.
We should just look at all these things before going into it. One few more questions are there, and then there are many questions in the chat box also we are getting. Yeah, what strategies or initiative work best for sustainable brand in improving customer retention and building brand loyalty over time?
So I think what worked for us is that we're a category brand in cleaning. So yes, my dishwash is my breakaway success product, but we are a category brand. So I would love it if Muskan tried my dishwash, for example, and then she said, okay, this worked for me. It cleans, and I'm getting a positive sort of sentiment when I'm looking at my hands. They're not feeling very dry, or I'm feeling satisfied with this product. And now, can I convert her to my detergent as well? Can I also get her to buy my hand wash? Can I get her to buy my floor cleaner? So at least I think it's important to therefore look at the consumer wallet a bit more holistically. If you're playing in a category, very few brands are able to say, okay, these are my two SKUs or my one SKU, and my whole brand is this one SKU. Typically you have a proposition, and the proposition works for the consumer. Yeah, that's what's working for us. So therefore we are able to sell three different kinds of products to a average koparo home, and then wo kuch na kuch to repeat karenge. So then
True
that
that.
flywheel starts.
One of the questions that's been asked is like, I guess educating the consumer is a very important thing in upcoming these days. So, what are the few best ways to educate the target audience? Like, if what you have done around that?
It takes time. Firstly, education is it आपको भी स्कूल में इतने साल लगे थे ना, तो it's gonna take time, right? There are no quick fixes, and you have to be very disciplined about it. So in the early days it was a lot about blogging. It was a lot about Reddit. It was a lot about Quora, because those are your power users. Those are people who are saying, I'm looking for non-ammonia floor cleaning, let's say, right? Those are your power users. So first you're educating them that you're looking for this, I'm here. And then you're educating, then the next level is you're educating the people who are sort of on the fence. You're like, this, I think my dishwash gel is toxic, but I don't know, and I don't even know if there's an alternative. And then for those people, it maybe meta works. That worked for us because my audience is like a 25 to 55-year-old woman. My absolute core demo is 35 to 45-year-old woman. She is spending a lot of time on meta, and therefore you can reach out to them by telling them that, did you care to think about what's inside your dishwash gel? These are the potential chemicals over there, and these are the potential side effects, and here is a better alternative, right? So I think education takes time. It's going to happen with a very disciplined strategy. You will have to have a social strategy. You will have to have your own blogging, your own content strategy. You may even have to have a founder specific strategy where you could be the face and the voice, and you put that message out there. Maybe later you do a collab with someone like a Revant. I mean, I'm just making this up, we've not done it, but I'm just saying that I know brands have done it, and
Right.
there's nothing wrong with that, because ultimate thing is you need to education takes time. Education,
Right.
multiple messages, you have to come at it from different angles. Sometimes you come at it with an angle of fear, sometimes you come at with an angle of saying, I'm there to hold your hand through your process. So think about what works for your product and category.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it will take time to convert the people who have the intent,
Yes.
and you have to hold on with them, keep telling the story about it. So I guess storytelling also helps there, right? A lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Charu asked a question that what percent of tier one population is willing to pay premium in cleaning category versus percent in tier two plus cities? So this is to suss out the population that can be realistically tapped into.
So see, I don't know what percentage of, let's say, Mumbai will pay and what percentage of Indore will pay. Like, I won't know that. But yes, of course, in general, if you have a sustainable message, the southern part of the country will resonate the first, because the literacy levels are higher, right? And therefore, people have already moved to that point where they're saying we want more out of our cleaning. We want more than just cleaning. Right? We want they're happy to have the discussions around biodegradability, around sustainability, around pet safety, child safety, and so on. So and no surprises there. Therefore, even for us, a Bangalore, Chennai, Kochi, and Indore took off first. Just give me 1 second. Yeah. Sorry, that's just my daughter coming back from school. And then, of course, the western part of the country again, because again, it's a richer, more affluent part. So I think different geographies sometimes respond differently, different demographics respond differently. Um, but of course, I mean, Mumbai will have more people who will be willing to pay a premium versus an Indore for sustainability. Yes, it
Right.
will. I think the first year, if you just realistically do Bangalore, Mumbai, Delhi, you cover a lot.
Yeah. I guess it's highly depend on the region of the India as well, right? Like you mentioned,
Yes.
Bangalore would be more conscious about these things compared to the northern region or maybe a tier two city.
Yes.
Yeah. So they can think more about that. Like, okay, and as for the purchasing power as well, right?
Correct.
Right. So one more question the Charu has asked, you face challenges in convincing customers that you are truly clean, better for everyone brand? What are brands like Whole Truth, Fool, Coparo, Open Secrets, etc. are doing differently
Mhm.
that can be temporalized and replicated by anyone else in the ecosystem?
Yeah. So firstly, I'm feeling really good that we are being counted in the same category with Whole Truth and Open Secret and Fool. These are some of my favorite, sustainable brands out there. I don't think there's a template. I think it's about telling your truth. Each of these categories you've mentioned, right, uh, from foods to agarbattis to kind of snacking are very different, right? And hence you're
Right.
looking for something very different. I think there is no template. I think there is certainly there is a certain truth to be told. There's a certain consumer truth, to be uncovered. And then it's about your pricing, your proposition, your distribution, and so on. So I wouldn't say template, but I think your first part of the question is very interesting. That how do you convince the consumers that you are truly clean? Because there's so much greenwashing that happens today, right? So, for example, in our category, there's a lot of players who will claim like a clean formulation, but they add color to it, right? Or they refuse to write the ingredients on the label. So I think you have to as a challenger brand, and all of us are challenger brands here, as a challenger brand, you have to push the boundary. You have to be obnoxious. You have to be obnoxious to the point where you have to call out the lies. You have to say, कि आपने, why have you not written your ingredients on your label? You have to say, कि क्या छुपाना चाहते हो कि आपने रंग डाला है? I'm just telling you what we will do, right? But and it'll be a different story for you depending on your product. But it's very important to be provocative enough and to tell your story like that. The other thing you can do is certifications. I think you don't have to go crazy. You don't have to have every certification. But definitely, if you want to say you're organic, you should be organic certified. If you want to say that you're biodegradable, you should figure out what's the bio-based content in your product. And there are labs which will do it. These tests cost somewhere between 20 to 30,000 rupees to like maybe a lakh or something like that per test. So depending on the claims you want to make, think about it. I always think that it's better to have it backed up a little bit with some third party claims as well, so that you're not seen as a like a me too, and you're not seen as somebody who's just saying it essay.
I guess, like you said, the people who are literate are actually gonna look at the labels and actually gonna ask what are the certifications you have done, right?
Yes.
So Mohit has asked this question that online versus offline, how should margin be structured across different layers? Maybe we can take Coparo as example to illustrate.
So the thing is, firstly, the first truth is that offline and online, please have pricing parity. You know, don't think that you get away by discounting online, but offline, फिर offline वो बिल्कुल नहीं बिकेगा, right? And your distributor will be unhappy, and they will push back on you, and then it's very difficult to go back into the market, because there's a reputational loss. So therefore, I genuinely feel that it is really the same gross margin that you start with on both the channels. Then of course, what you will have to end up paying distributors will be different in the early years. But that's true for online as well. What you'll end up paying a marketplace will be different in your year one. By year three, maybe you get a certain concession and you get certain, fee revisions. So I think they work very, very similarly. Net, maybe you don't have to do marketing, digital marketing for offline, but you may have to put in promoters and beauty advisors and things like that. You may have to run some sales schemes. So net, you will find, and at least I find, and I'm also a student of economics, is that net, all channels tend to the same margin. You initially will see, like initially, when you list on QCOM, you see, because it's your pent up demand which gets serviced. Initially, you'll say, wow, like this is such a great margin channel. Then when you have to go and acquire new customers all over again, then again the economics of that will stabilize. And so it all tends to the mean, it tends to the mean, because there's just no free lunches, no, not for the consumer, not for the brand.
True that. I guess I'm not able to read the name, but somebody's asked a very personal question to you that how long post launch did it take you to make some sustainable MRR?
So yeah, sustainable ML. I mean, as a founder, I'm never happy, right? We want to grow, and like let's say, you want to triple your revenue. So you're always in that race where you're always trying to do more in the next month. Um, so yeah, I wouldn't say we've plateaued or anything like that, and that we're sustaining at a certain level. But I think maybe post Shark Tank is when we were able to kind of get a good fillip, and we were able to hold on to a lot of that revenue, and that was somewhat satisfying. And of course, now we want to grow even more. Um, but maybe what you're trying to ask me is that when do some of the metrics start looking good? When do they start looking healthy? I think, look, no one answer. I mean, minimalist scale to 100 crores in 1 year. Um, you know, I didn't, so no one answer. And but definitely around the 3 year mark is when there is better PMF if you've survived, and there is better CACs. Your repeats are kicking in. You'll start seeing some goodness. Maybe your scale is more, your cogs are improving, so you'll start seeing some goodness around.
Yeah, yeah, please continue. Sorry, maybe some background.
Yeah, so just that's all. That's where I'll yeah say that the goodness will start kicking in year three. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, same thing. I just actually coming from the Thai event, and I just heard a panel. I was hearing they said the same thing, right? He was building. He's facing the climate tech, and he mentioned that for sustainability space and climate space, it's a long haul. It's not like you get it in 1 year or 2 years. You got to wait till at least few years, but the time has come for the people who have waited.
Yes.
And yeah, so that's what I guess you got to wait in this particular space, and it's a long haul kind of a thing. So one question is also there that thank you sharing your thought. ISB batch 25 here. You did mention you are a digital first brand. When does a brand start thinking about offline expansion or distribution? Pulkit has asked this.
Yeah. Um, I think you can think about it, but don't spend money on it till you have proper brand pull. And by that I mean, you know, MT, modern trade in our country, is not a very proven channel where you can make money, because there's a huge amount of listing fees that, like, the Reliance Retails and the Spencers, etc., of the world will take, right? They take that huge listing fees from Coca-Cola, Pepsi. So you can imagine um, how prohibitive and exorbitant that cost will be on your P&L as a small brand. So the true joy of offline, or the channel which is compounding for offline and hence very interesting to people, is general trade. And you can only go to general trade with very limited SKUs because obviously it's a small shop. And secondly, you should go to it and you will only be allowed in it, right? I mean, when there is brand pull. So if there are people who are actually walking into a shop and saying ki Koparo ka dish gel hai aapke paas, right? And if that starts happening in Vasant Vihar where I live, then yes, I should be in GT. But if that's not happening, then the current audience that is Coparo compliant, let me say, can just buy me from Blinkit or Swiggy or my website or Amazon. And then that's what I should do. So I think you will know when there is brand pull. Um, People will tell you. And secondly, you will also know when your online revenue starts plateauing and when it starts becoming very stagnated and it's harder and harder for you to grow there. And then also, it doesn't necessarily mean offline is the answer. It could mean other things. It could mean category expansion is the answer, or it could mean that there is something wrong in the pricing, or it could mean that you're leaving you've in your portfolio of SKUs, you've left certain flanks, and other people have come in and taken market share away. So it could mean a variety of things, but I feel that ultimately there has to be brand pull in GT for you to do offline. I'm not considering MT as offline.
One last question that actually I have. So, do you think that tapping into influencer marketing can help in educating the consumer, or you should only go for the organic consumer?
I think if you're saying, the traditional influencer marketing, what it was, like let's say till very recently, right? I think everyone is talking about it, the ROI, and that is very, very poor today because the same influencers are endorsing your competition in the morning and then you in the evening, and then next day they're talking about something completely different, which is totally not on your brand. So you will never be able to control that so tightly. But every once in a while, you will meet somebody who will make such imminent sense, right? Let's say you're meeting a car. Let's say you're making a range of car cleaning and car indulgence, products. Um, if you actually tie up with somebody who's a proper, car enthusiast and an influencer, then that makes imminent sense. Similarly, if you are working in the space of healthy snacking, right, or fortified atas and things like that, then it would make a lot of sense for you to collaborate with Revant and, talk about why he's excited about your product if he agrees to do something like that. So it has to be very, very thought through, right? And then don't shy away from spending money on it, right? Because these influences will cost a bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we are done with all the questions that we have. Yes, and any more questions, guys? Please do ask. This is the chance. Yes, we received tons of questions actually, but everything is gotten covered in somewhat other way because they all are like they are still coming up and somewhat similar. They have the questions, so we have covered, I guess, most of the things. Right. So yes, thank you so much for doing this today, and because it was really much needed to answer all these questions that to burst certain myths around sustainability today. So more and more people can choose to build brands around it, and so we can make the world a better place to be in for the next generation. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Any last words you would like to say?
No, thanks, Muskan. Good luck to everybody who's building and who's looking to work in startups. That's fantastic. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much. Yes.
Bye.
See you. See you. Please stay in touch. Thank you so much. Bye.